The award-winning Cinema Classics is produced by John DeSando and Johnny DiLoretto. Listen to the shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
Cinema Classics is brought to you by the Gateway Film Center at 1550 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio. Further details and showtimes are online at gatewayfilmcenter.org. I'm Johnny DiLoretto.
I'm John DeSando.
This is Cinema Classics.
Right.
And a soon-to-be classic portrayal of James Bond, I think going down in the annals as one of the best James Bonds in history, is going to be this guy, Daniel Craig.
I even bought a new tuxedo with a European cut to imitate the Bond look that Daniel Craig brings to it.
Is that right?
Yeah, and he's
Your
close.
sartorial aspirations know no limits.
He is closer to my height.
Is he?
And he's the shortest Bond ever.
But not your build.
No. Anyway, so he's coming up, Inspector.
Yes, this will be his fourth go-round.
Or it may even be out there now.
No, it's by the time this airs.
By the time this airs.
Oh man,
yeah.
Wow, well, that would be really exciting because
Yeah.
I'm very excited for it. This will be his fourth go-round. I think he's contractually obliged to do one more before there are some negotiations. But by that time, he may be too old for the role. I will say this: I was not thrilled with his casting at first. I remember them announcing that this was going to be the new guy, and he had that short blonde hair, and it just...
First blonde Bond.
Yeah, it just didn't sit right with
Yeah.
me, as somebody who grew up loving
Yeah.
James Bond and obsessed with the films. And, you know, I just wasn't sure. I remember also seeing Casino Royale for the first time. And
That was his first one, right?
That was his first
Yeah.
one, yeah. And they sort of rebooted the whole thing. There was a different tone. It was much more serious. And, you know, again, I just kind of didn't know how to process it. And at first, I dismissed it. And I was like, I don't think I like this. And then there was something about his portrayal, something about that first film that brought me back. And I watched it a lot. I watched it a lot with my kid. And I was in love with it. I was in love with this, hey, I'm down with treating James Bond in a sort of dark Batman-like fashion. I love that. And Daniel Craig proves to be this really soulful, brooding Bond that it brings the character to life in a new way. I love it.
Well, he's a graduate of the Guildhall School of Music and Drama at the Barbican. And so
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's
the Guildhall School. What is that?
Yeah, and so that's just a classic training school for actors. Ewan McGregor, Alistair McGowan, Damian Lewis, and Joseph Fiennes are also graduates of this. So yes, and he brings a seriousness to it. And here's what he says about that.
Yeah,
I think you're right on. He says, everybody always moans, where's Bond gone? Where are all the jokes? Well, give us time. I always had a master plan in the back of my head that with the third movie, if I ever got there, it would be time to take the gloves off and bring the gags back on.
Yeah. And I'm glad that they didn't do that.
Yes.
That third movie turned out to be Skyfall, which is one of the highest grossing James Bond movies
Right.
of all time. Skyfall is a lot of fun.
Yes.
There is some of that classic humor going on there, but it doesn't tip the tone over. I kind of worry that they're going to do that. Like, you know, because traditionally that's always what's happened. You know, the Connery pictures started out with Dr. No, From Russia with Love, which were pretty straightforward spy movies, apart from some of the fantastical elements. From Russia with Love, definitely a more kind of serious entry. Then Goldfinger, you get the classic balance, you know, and then after that it starts to get a little jokier, a little sillier.
I know.
And each actor has had that.
Well, the worst was Roger Moore.
Right.
He just went over the top with those asides.
Yeah, it got to be really kind of smarmy.
Well, for Daniel Craig, let me remind you of some of the movies he's been in where he's really attempted to get away even from from the Bond designation.
Yeah.
He knows that when you take this role, there's a good chance nobody will ever let it go for your lifetime.
Right.
But he, like Connery, is very conscious of himself as an actor. So he was in Infamous in 2006. This was about Truman Capote and about In Cold Blood, and he
Yeah.
played one of the two murderers,
Right.
Perry Smith.
Yeah.
So
Now that was the same year that Casino Royale came out, so
you're right.
it was there wasn't a whole lot of dialogue between the two parts at that point.
Yeah, you're right. In 2005, just the year before, Munich, where he played the most militant of those Mossad agents. And so, again, another kind of very serious role. And the one I really love, the one that got my attention for him as an actor was Layer Cake.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's probably the movie that got him the part.
Yeah, yeah. And he was nominated, actually, for that role.
Was he?
Yeah.
Nominated for an Oscar?
Yes, he was.
That's
It was
right.
it's a fine acting role, yeah. Anyway, also
I didn't know that.
he was in 2003. He was another literate movie, Sylvia. He played Ted Hughes to Sylvia Plath.
I missed that one.
Okay, and me too. And I don't think it was a big success.
Yeah.
But an idea of how this guy is
For sure.
serious.
I think they've all tried to do that. Probably Roger Moore less so than anybody. He
I
just
know.
kind of. I think Roger Moore's attempts at stretching outside of the James Bond role were in the Cannonball Run movies. But
well,
Connery, no one has had success outside of the role like Connery.
right.
Connery made a lot of great, really artful movies with Sidney Lumet, like The Hill, The Offense. Later in his career, The Untouchables. He had some fun, older action hero roles in movies like The Rock. Nobody has had that kind of success outside of, because I don't think that anybody is quite like Connery.
No, not.
But Daniel Craig is trying. I do wish him success outside of. I wish I could see him in a part that I really liked. You know, he was in that the Girl in the Dragon Tattoo movies.
Yes, and he's coming out in another one, alleged.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
There's just one that he's in. Yeah. And that was fun to see him in that part, but the movie failed him.
Yeah.
What do you think about? Let's talk a little bit more about his looks as a classic character like James Bond, who is traditionally supposed to be a really, gorgeous-looking guy. What do you think about?
Well, I have a personal friend named Billy Grove who resembles him.
Okay.
A charming guy from South Africa, and an actor and a great investor and so on. But what I'm trying to say is that while they may not have that tall, lean Connery look, these guys, like Craig, have a certain boyishness, and they're physically fit.
Yeah.
They have a quality, even down to the ears coming out a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is not a handsome quality, but it makes them completely different from the totally sophisticated.
Right, and it certainly humanizes Bond in a way,
I
and sort of allows for that more soulful approach.
Yes.
He is not a perfect guy. Like I love, kind of like Clint Eastwood in Unforgiven, where you see him sort of have an emotional breakdown. The iconic Clint Eastwood Western hero doing that was a very powerful moment for me. In some respects, it's the same where you see, Daniel Craig, like especially in Skyfall, where he's just teary-eyed and sort of bleary-eyed and just beaten down, and that look humanizes that character in a great way. Also in Skyfall, what's beautiful is that little bit with the bulldog.
Yes.
That Judi Dench gives him.
Yes.
Because he is like a bulldog. He looks like a bulldog.
It does, right.
And that is one of Daniel Craig's signature characteristics as James Bond, is his tenacity. And that's what I really love about his portrayal. In that first movie, Casino Royale, when he's chasing the guy through the construction site, up the crane, and this guy is like really skillful, and he's doing all this parkour stuff, and he jumps through a window, and Daniel Craig crashes through the window. he crashes through a wall to get to him. I love that notion that maybe sometimes James Bond isn't necessarily the most graceful figure, but that he is the most tenacious figure.
Well, here's what Craig himself says about Connery, because he wrote to Connery asking him to have his blessing, and Connery wrote back yes. And here's what he says about Connery's, which is not necessarily the same as Craig's portrayal. He was bad, sexy, animalistic, and stylish. That's what he said about Connery playing. And not one of those really about what Daniel Craig is all about. I think you got it at the beginning of our discussion. The intensity, the serious actor. Even though Connery can be all of those, That's what Daniel Craig brings to this. I'm going to enjoy the gloves coming off and the gags coming on
Yeah.
as he goes on with this.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see what Spectre is like. You know, they tried to do that with a classical actor before.
Oh, Timothy
with
Dalton.
Timothy Dalton.
You're right.
And he wasn't an awful James Bond, but he wasn't.
was.
He definitely lacked something.
He really did.
Quintessentially Bond-ish, and you know that those two portrayals felt really flat.
Well, I've seen a whole host of James Bond in my time,
Mm-hmm.
and Daniel Craig is not Sean Connery, but he probably is my favorite after Connery.
Yeah, I think I might be with you.